Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I know many of you are listening to these stories as you unwind from a long day, perhaps seeking a moment of quiet amidst the noise of the waking world. So before we drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from tonight. It is always fascinating to see how far our voice travels across the miles. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this story involves real people and real events. We tell these stories not for entertainment, but to remember the resilience found in the darkest of moments. Now please, get comfortable, close your eyes, and relax. Let the sound of the rain and the darkness of the screen wash over you as we dive into tonight's case. Safety is often an illusion. We build walls to keep it in. But sometimes, the walls we rely on are made only of glass and good intentions. Tonight, we travel to the ancient city of Bergamo, where the Alps stand like silent sentinels against the winter sky, watching over a valley that holds both deep history and sudden, quiet violence. Bergamo is a city of two souls. There's the Città Alta, the upper town, encircled by Venetian walls that have stood for centuries, protecting its cobblestone streets and medieval secrets from the passage of time. And below it lies the Città Bassa, the lower town, where modern life hums along with a steady, predictable rhythm. It is a place where the past and the present exist in a quiet truce, separated only by the elevation of the land and the funicular railway that connects them. On this particular day, the valley was draped in the heavy gray cloak of late winter. It was February 14th, Valentine's Day. A day usually associated with warmth, affection, and the color red. But in northern Italy, in the shadow of the mountains, the air was crisp and bit at the exposed skin of anyone foolish enough to walk without a scarf. The sky was a flat, featureless expanse of slate, heavy with the promise of freezing rain or perhaps the last snow of the season. The dampness in this part of the world is not just a weather condition, it is a texture. It seeps into the stone of the buildings, it slicks the pavement of the narrow streets, it muffles the sound of tires on the asphalt, turning the roar of traffic into a distant, rhythmic hiss. If you were standing on the walls of the upper town looking down, the city would look like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Soft edges, muted colors, and a pervasive sense of stillness. We often move through our days assuming the people around us are following the same script we are. We assume they are also heading home, also thinking about dinner, also looking for warmth. But sometimes, lines of fate cross in ways we cannot anticipate. On this quiet Saturday, the script was about to change for one family, though they had no way of knowing it yet. The day had started like any other Saturday in the region. The cafes were full of the clatter of espresso cups and the low murmur of conversation. The florists were busy wrapping roses in plastic against the cold. The rhythm of the city was unbroken. It was a day of routine, of errands, and of the small, mundane tasks that make up the fabric of a life. And there is perhaps no task more mundane, more universally understood than the weekly grocery trip. It is a ritual we all perform. We make lists, we navigate aisles, we make choices between brands of pasta and types of bread. It is a space of low stakes and high predictability. But before we walk down the aisles of the Esselunga supermarket, we must first understand the silence of the valley. The Alps stand like silent sentinels in the distance, their peaks hidden by the low-hanging clouds of late winter. They are the guardians of this region, immovable and ancient. They have watched over Bergamo for millennia, seeing armies come and go, seeing the city rise and fall and rise again. They are indifferent observers to the human dramas that play out in their shadow. On this afternoon, the mountains held back the wind, but they could not hold back the chill. The temperature was dropping as the afternoon wore on, the light fading early as it does in February. The street lights were beginning to flicker on, casting pools of yellow light on the wet sidewalks. People hurried from their cars to the shops, heads ducked against the cold, their breath rising in white plumes of steam that vanished almost instantly into the gray air. It was in this atmosphere, cold, damp, and deceptively quiet, that a mother and her 1-year-old daughter found themselves. They were not looking for adventure. They were not looking for trouble. They were simply living their lives, moving through the safe, structured world of a Saturday afternoon errand. They were wrapped in winter coats, insulated against the weather, and insulated, they believed, against the dangers of the world. The mother held the child. The child, barely a year old, was likely bundled in layers, a small, fragile life protected by the warmth of the parent. This physical connection, the sensation of a child's weight in a mother's arms, is one of the oldest and most primal bonds in nature. It is a bond of protection, of ownership, and of love. And on this gray afternoon in Bergamo, that bond was about to be tested by a force as sudden and unyielding as a winter storm. But for now, there was only the rain, the gentle, persistent tapping of water against glass, the sound of distant church bells tolling the hour, their notes drifting down from the upper town to the streets below, and the quiet, steady hum of a city settling in for the evening. There is a specific kind of peace found in the aisles of a supermarket. It is a modern sanctuary of abundance. The shelves are stocked, the lights are steady, and the world outside, with its cold winds and uncertainties, feels very far away. The Escalating Mall in Bergamo is no exception. Like grocery stores across the world, it is designed to be a place of comfort and consistency. The moment the automatic doors slide open, the sensory experience shifts. The smell of wet pavement and exhaust is replaced by the scent of baking bread from the bakery section and the sharp, clean aroma of fresh produce. The chill of the February air is replaced by the regulated, artificial warmth of the climate control system. For the last hour, this was the world the mother and daughter inhabited, a world of bright colors and clear choices. The rhythmic beeping of the scanners at the checkout counters creates a hypnotic, almost musical backdrop to the experience. Beep, beep, beep. It is the sound of commerce, yes, but also the sound of order. Each beep signifies a transaction completed, an item accounted for, a life moving forward one product at a time. We can imagine the scene. The mother, perhaps pushing a cart with a slightly squeaky wheel, checking items off a mental or physical list. The child, sitting in the child seat of the cart, eyes wide, taking in the kaleidoscope of packaging. The red of the tomato sauce jars, the blue of the pasta boxes, the bright yellow of the lemons. To a 1-year-old, a supermarket is a museum of wonders, a place where the world is reduced to grabbable, colorful shapes. They moved through the aisles, surrounded by the murmur of other shoppers, couples deciding on a bottle of wine for their Valentine's dinner. elderly men examining the freshness of vegetables with critical eyes, families negotiating over which cereal to buy. It was a collective experience of domesticity. In this space, everyone is equal. Everyone has the same basic needs. Everyone is following the same social contract of civility and personal space. This is the safety frame we all live within. When we're in public spaces like this, surrounded by witnesses, surrounded by cameras, surrounded by the trappings of civilization, we lower our guard. We do not expect violence in the cereal aisle. We do not expect danger by the dairy case. We assume that the rules of the store apply to everyone. You select your items, you pay for them, and you leave. The mother likely felt this safety deep in her bones, even if she didn't consciously think about it. It allowed her to focus on the child, on the list, on the simple mechanics of the day. She was not scanning the perimeter for threats. She was checking the expiration date on a carton of milk. She was not looking for an escape route. She was looking for the shortest line at the checkout. As they finished their shopping, the routine continued. The items were placed on the conveyor belt. The cashier, perhaps tired near the end of a shift, scanned them through. The baggers, or perhaps the mother herself, packed the groceries into reusable bags. The transaction was finalized. The receipt was printed. It is important to understand this sequence of events because of how normal it was. There were no warning signs. The lights did not flicker. The music over the loudspeakers did not change to a minor key. The atmosphere inside the Esselunga remained perfectly, banally consistent. The mother lifted her daughter. Perhaps the child was tired of sitting in the cart. Or perhaps it was just easier to carry her out to the car. She held the girl on her hip, or tight against her chest, wrapping her arms around the small, winter-coated body. This grip, casual, affectionate, yet firm, was the standard posture of parenthood. It was not a defensive grip. Not yet. They began to walk toward the exit. The distance from the checkout lanes to the sliding glass doors is usually a transition zone, a place where you button up your coat, check your pockets for your keys, and mentally prepare to re-enter the weather outside. It is a liminal space, neither fully in the store nor fully on the street. Other shoppers were doing the same. Carts rattled over the tiled floor. People checked their phones. The automatic doors hissed open and closed, letting in gusts of the damp February air, mixing with the warm, stale air of the interior. For the mother and child, this was just the final step in a successful errand. The car was likely parked nearby. The heater would be turned on. The drive home would be quiet, perhaps with the radio playing softly. Dinner would be made. The bath would be run. The routine of the evening was laid out before them like a straight, clear road. But in the periphery of this domestic scene, a variable was waiting, an anomaly in the pattern. We often talk about wrong place, wrong time. But for the mother, she was in the right place. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what mothers have done for generations, providing for her family. The violation that was about to occur was not a result of her choices, but of a collision with a chaotic element that had drifted into her orbit. As they approached the threshold of the automatic doors, the invisible barrier between safety and danger began to thin. The glass doors parted for them, sensing their movement. The cold air hit their faces. They stepped onto the mat in the vestibule. that small rectangle of space that belongs to no one. And there, the sanctuary of the mundane dissolved. Not with a bang, but with a sudden, silent shift in gravity. The world, which had been ordered and predictable for the last hour, was about to tilt on its axis. The peaceful hum of the supermarket was about to be pierced by a struggle that would leave scars, both physical and emotional, that no receipt could account for. But for one final second, let us hold them there, in the warmth, in the safety, in the quiet confidence that the world is a good and orderly place. The mother holding her daughter, the daughter holding on to the mother. Two figures in a vast, well-lit hall, unaware that they were walking out of the light and into the shadow of a stranger's intent. To understand the violation that was about to occur, we must first understand the sanctity of the space where it began. The Esselunga supermarket is not merely a store, it is a modern cathedral of order. Inside, the chaos of the natural world is suspended. The winter wind that whips through the valleys of the Alps cannot reach past the automatic doors. The gray, uncertain light of a February afternoon is replaced by the steady, unwavering glow of fluorescent tubes. Here, there are no shadows. Here, everything is illuminated, labeled, and placed in its correct row. It is a controlled environment designed to make us feel provided for. And on this particular Valentine's Day, it was functioning exactly as intended. We often take these spaces for granted. We move through them in a trance, pushing our carts over the polished linoleum floors, our minds drifting to dinner plans and evening routines. But if you stop to listen, really listen, the supermarket has a heartbeat. It is a low, rhythmic hum composed of 1,000 small sounds, the squeak of rubber wheels on a waxed floor, the distant, soft clatter of items being placed on a conveyor belt, the periodic musical beep of a scanner registering a price. It is the sound of civilization functioning smoothly. It is a white noise that wraps around us like a blanket, telling us that we are safe, that there is enough food, and that the systems of our world are working. On this day, the aisles were filled with the specific energy of a holiday. Not a loud energy, but a purposeful one. Men in winter coats were lingering in the chocolate aisle, examining red heart-shaped boxes with a seriousness usually reserved for tax documents. Women were selecting bottles of wine, perhaps imagining a quiet evening once the children were asleep. The air smelled faintly of yeast and warm sugar from the bakery section, a scent that triggers a primal feeling of home in the deepest parts of the brain. It is a smell that says, you are sheltered, you are fed, you are among neighbors. The mother and her 1-year-old daughter moved through this landscape with the practiced ease of a weekly ritual. We do not know what was on their list that day. Perhaps it was milk, perhaps it was bread or fruit or ingredients for a special dinner. It does not matter. What matters is the rhythm of their movement. The mother, likely tired from the day, focused on the task at hand. The child, small and fragile, observing the world from the height of a shopping cart, or perhaps toddling unsteadily alongside, her hand gripping the mother's coat. To a 1-year-old, a supermarket is a universe of sensory wonder. The colors of the fruit aisle are brighter than anything in nature. Pyramids of oranges, stacks of green apples, the deep purple of eggplants. The lights overhead reflect off the cellophane wrappers, creating a dazzling array of sparkles. The world is tall, towering shelves of boxes and jars, a canyon of commerce that stretches up toward the ceiling. And in this vastness, the mother is the anchor. She is the fixed point around which the child's world revolves. As long as the mother is there, within reach, the child is safe. They moved past the refrigerated section, where the air grows cooler and the hum of the compressors becomes a steady drone. This is a place of preservation. The milk, the cheese, the yogurt, all kept in a state of suspended freshness. It is a testament to our ability to control our environment, to keep the decay of time at bay. The mother likely reached into the chill, her hand selecting a carton, her mind perhaps calculating the expiration date, thinking of the future. That is the luxury of safety, the ability to plan for next week, assuming that next week will be much like today. The floor of the Escalunga is a vast expanse of speckled tile, worn smooth by the passage of countless feet. If you look down, you can see the faint scuff marks of winter boots, the trails of water from wet umbrellas that have long since dried. Every mark tells a story of a person who came here, bought what they needed, and left unharmed. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of trips, a statistical mountain of safety. The odds of anything interrupting this flow are so infinitesimally small that our brains do not even register the possibility. We lower our guard. We let our shoulders drop. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable because the environment tells us there is no need for armor here. As they navigated the pasta aisle, surrounded by the staples of Italian life, the atmosphere would have been particularly cozy. The rustle of dry pasta in boxes, the clink of glass jars of tomato sauce. These are the sounds of a kitchen before the cooking begins. They are sounds of promise. In the background, perhaps a muffled announcement played over the intercom, a voice disjointed and calm, directing staff to a specific register or announcing a special on detergent. It is part of the lullaby of the mundane. It fades into the background, becoming just another texture in the sonic landscape of the afternoon. The mother checked her list. A mental tick, a physical pause. The child may have reached out to grab a colorful package, a small hand extending toward the bright designs designed to catch exactly that kind of attention. A gentle correction from the mother, a soft word. These microscopic interactions happen millions of times a day across the world. They are the invisible threads that bind a parent to a child. The constant monitoring, the constant guiding, the constant presence. It is a bond that feels unbreakable because, in the course of a normal day, it is never truly tested. It is just there, like gravity. Around them, other shoppers continued their own silent journeys. A couple discussing which cheese to buy for a risotto. An elderly man examining a melon with the scrutiny of a jeweler. They were all participating in the same collective dream of the afternoon. They were neighbors, even if they did not know each other's names. They shared a geography, a city, and a moment in time. In a place like Bergamo, with its deep roots and ancient walls, there is an assumption of community. The walls of the Città Alta were built centuries ago to keep out invading armies, to protect the people within. Now, in the modern era, we assume that the walls of law, of social contract, of basic human decency serve the same purpose. We assume they are high enough. We assume they are strong enough. The cart rolled on. The wheels hummed. The time passed in a slow, liquid flow. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. The basket filling up with the necessities of life. Every item added was a small act of faith in the future. You buy a loaf of bread because you expect to eat toast in the morning. You buy a carton of juice because you expect to pour it into a glass tomorrow. Shopping is an inherently optimistic act. It presupposes continuity. It presupposes that the person who walks into the store will be the same person who walks out, just slightly more burdened with groceries. Eventually, the ritual draws to a close. The mother steers the cart toward the front of the store, toward the checkout lanes. This is the final stage of the sanctuary. The conveyor belt, black and rubbery, moves with a mechanical jerk. Items are placed on it one by one. The separation bar is laid down to define the boundary between one life and another. My groceries, your groceries, my world, your world. The cashier, seated and efficient, begins the process of cataloging. The beep of the scanner is faster here. Beep, beep, beep. It is a tempo that signals the end of the trance. The total is announced. Money is exchanged. Or perhaps a card is swiped, a silent transfer of digital value. The receipt is printed, a jagged strip of paper that serves as a record of existence for the last hour. Proof that you were here. Proof that you bought these things. The groceries are bagged. The rustle of plastic or the crinkle of paper. The weight of the bags is familiar and grounding. The mother gathers them. She adjusts her grip on the child. This is the transition point. The moment when the focus shifts from the internal world of the store to the external journey home. The car keys are located in a pocket or a purse. The mental map of the drive home is activated. The anticipation of stepping back out into the cold air begins to build. At this moment, standing by the registers, they were still deep within the safe container. The security guards, if there were any, were likely bored, watching the monitors with glazed eyes. The cameras in the ceiling, hidden behind dark domes, recorded the scene in silence. They captured the image of the mother and child in grainy black and white. In the footage, there's nothing to distinguish this moment from any other. No dark aura surrounds them. No warning light flashes on the screen. They are just pixelated figures in a sea of data, finishing their errands on a Tuesday afternoon. The automatic doors loom ahead. They are glass, transparent, offering a view of the vestibule and the parking lot beyond. Through the glass, the gray light of the late afternoon presses against the warmth of the interior. The rain has likely started to fall harder now, or perhaps it is just the mist thickening as the sun begins to set behind the clouds. The transition from the artificial brightness of the Esselunga to the gloom of the winter evening is sharp. It requires a physical adjustment, a tightening of the scarf, a buttoning of the coat, a pulling of the child closer to the body to shield them from the wind. But they have not crossed the threshold yet. They are in the in-between space, the few meters of floor between the registers and the exit. It is a space of relief. The task is done. The list is complete. The reward of home is imminent. This is often when we are most distracted. Our minds are already projecting forward to the next scene, unlocking the car, loading the bags, navigating the traffic. We are not present in the moment. We are living 5 minutes in the future. And because we are living in the future, we do not see the present waiting for us. We do not see the anomaly standing near the entrance. We assume the pattern will hold. We assume the rhythm of the automatic doors opening and closing is just the rhythm of people coming and going. Open, close, open, close. A mechanical respiration that allows people to pass freely between the sanctuary and the storm. The mother adjusted the child on her hip, or perhaps settled her into the cart for the short walk to the car. The physical connection between them was casual, born of habit. A hand holding a small wrist, a torso leaning against a shoulder. It was a connection that had never needed to be defensive. It was a connection of affection, not protection. In the safe space of the supermarket, you hold your child to comfort them, not to keep them. The hum of the store seemed to fade slightly as they approached the glass. The sound of the rain against the pavement outside became audible. A low, wet hiss. The world outside was waiting. It was a world of wet cobblestones, of headlights reflecting on puddles, of distant church bells marking the hour. It was the world of Bergamo in winter, beautiful, melancholy, and cold. They walked toward the doors. The sensors, detecting their motion, prepared to part the glass. A puff of cold air, smelling of exhaust and damp earth, swirled into the vestibule, mixing with the warm, yeasty air of the store. It was the scent of the borderland, the line where the controlled environment ends and the uncontrolled reality begins. Most of us cross this line a dozen times a day without a thought. We step out of our homes, out of our offices, out of stores. We trust the transition. We trust that the rules of the interior apply to the exterior. We trust that the social contract extends to the sidewalk. But on this Valentine's Day, in the gray twilight of northern Italy, the social contract was about to be challenged. The silence of the surveillance tape continued to spool, recording frame after frame of normalcy, inching closer and closer to the frame where everything would shatter. The mother took a step. The child looked out at the rain, and the doors began to slide open. The mechanism of an automatic door is something we rarely consider. It is a mundane piece of engineering, a sensor that detects motion and parts the glass to allow passage. For the mother and her child, standing at the checkout of the Escalating, this threshold was simply the final step in a routine evening. The groceries had been scanned, the rhythmic beep of the register marking the passage of items from the conveyor belt to the bags. It was a sound of commerce, steady and predictable, a digital heartbeat that underscored the safety of the indoors. At the time, the store was winding down, though the energy remained warm and illuminated. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a consistent, shadowless glow on the linoleum floor, banishing the gloom of the February evening waiting outside. The mother gathered her receipt, a small slip of paper documenting the ordinary necessities of life. She adjusted her grip on her daughter, lifting the 1-year-old onto her hip. There is a specific physics to this posture, a balance that mothers learn instinctively, creating a single center of gravity between two bodies. They moved toward the exit, passing the rows of shopping carts nested together like sleeping metal beasts. The air in the vestibule would be colder, a transition zone between the climate-controlled aisles and the damp streets of Bergamo. The sliding doors sensed their approach. With a soft pneumatic hiss, the glass panels retreated into the walls, breaking the seal of the sanctuary. The air that rushed in to meet them was heavy with moisture, carrying the scent of wet pavement and the exhaust of passing cars. It was Valentine's Day, and outside, The world had turned to a deep, bruised blue. The streetlights in the parking lot were reflecting off the puddles, creating fractured mirrors on the asphalt. The mother stepped onto the mat, her focus likely on the car, on the drive home, on the simple comfort of a heater warming cold hands. She tightened her hold on her daughter, a subconscious reaction to the drop in temperature, wrapping the child in the warmth of her own coat. They were crossing the threshold, moving from the light into the gray, unaware that the rhythm of their evening was about to be interrupted by a force that had been waiting in the stillness. We often move through our days assuming the people around us are following the same script we are. We assume they are also heading home, also thinking about dinner, also seeking shelter from the rain. But sometimes, lines of fate cross in ways we cannot anticipate. Standing near the entrance, just beyond the slide of the glass doors, was a figure who was not moving. In the surveillance footage that would later be reviewed by investigators, he appears as a static anomaly in a field of motion. While other shoppers walked with purpose, heading toward their vehicles with heads ducked against the drizzle, this man remained still. He was not checking a phone. He was not waiting for a ride. He was simply existing in the space between the store and the street, a shadow lingering in the doorway. To the casual observer, he might have looked like someone pausing to zip a jacket or check a receipt. But in the silent, grainy language of the security camera, his stillness speaks of intent. From above, the scene looks like a silent film. The figures move in a grainy, black and white dance, detached from the emotions of the moment. We see the mother and child emerge from the bright interior. We see the man turn. There was no dramatic music, no sudden shift in the lighting. The tragedy of the moment lies in its quietness. The man did not run. He simply stepped into their path. It was a disruption of flow, like a stone placed in a stream, forcing the water to break around it. He was waiting for an opportunity that only he understood. The mother, stepping out into the cold air, likely did not register him as a threat until the distance between them closed. In the busy entrance of a supermarket, personal space is often compressed. We are used to brushing past strangers, but as she walked forward, expecting the cold air and the walk to the car, the man's posture shifted. The static anomaly became kinetic. The script of the evening was rewritten in a fraction of a second, turning a mundane departure into a moment where time seemed to suspend, held in place by the sudden, terrifying gravity of his presence. The interaction, when it happened, was a study in opposing forces. The man reached out. He did not speak, or if he did, his words were lost to the damp wind. His hands moved toward the child, grabbing the toddler with a sudden, jarring meaningfulness. It is important to know right now that the child remains with the mother. The grip held. The bond was stronger than the force trying to break it. The surveillance video captures the mechanics of the struggle without the sound. We see the man pull. We see the mother react. It was not a conscious decision on her part. It was biology. The maternal reflex is faster than thought, a primal command that overrides fear. She became an anchor. Her body, which moments ago was relaxed and moving toward the parking lot, instantly locked into a stance of absolute resistance. She pulled back, her arms forming a protective cage around her daughter. The struggle was a silent tug of war played out on the wet concrete. The man, driven by an inexplicable aggression, tried to wrestle the child from the mother's arms. The force applied was immense. Bones, still growing and fragile, were subjected to the physics of adult violence. The toddler's femur, the strongest bone in the body, could not withstand the torque of the pull. It fractured. But even in pain, even in the chaos of the assault, the connection between mother and child did not break. Gravity seemed to shift, centering entirely on this small family unit. The mother did not let go. She absorbed the shock, the violence, and the terror, channeling it all into the strength of her hands. The man's attempt was desperate, a flurry of motion against the solid wall of maternal instinct. He pulled, but she held fast. In the gray light of the parking lot, amidst the splashing of rain and the distant hum of traffic, a line was drawn that he could not cross. The snatch failed. The child remained in the arms that knew her best, held tight against a heart that was beating now with the ferocious rhythm of survival. There is a concept in psychology known as the bystander effect, where the presence of others dilutes the responsibility to act. But on this rainy evening in Bergamo, that theory dissolved. The struggle at the doorway did not go unnoticed. The disruption in the visual field, the sudden frantic movement in a place of slow routine, drew the eyes of those nearby. Shoppers who had been loading their cars paused. People inside the vestibule, shaking off umbrellas, looked up. The confusion of the first few seconds, the question of, is this a domestic dispute, quickly resolved into the realization of danger. And then, the community moved. It was not a coordinated military maneuver, but a collective surge of protective instinct. A stranger nearby dropped their bags. Another stepped forward from the warmth of the store. They formed a human wall. It was a physical manifestation of the social contract that had been violated moments before. People encircled the mother and child, placing their own bodies between the aggressor and his target. The isolation the mother had felt in the initial seconds of the attack vanished, replaced by a fortress of coats and outstretched arms. The man, who had acted with such impunity moments before, was now outnumbered. He was neutralized not by excessive violence, but by the sheer weight of the crowd. He was contained. The space around him shrank as the citizens of Bergamo closed ranks. He was no longer a predator in the shadows. He was a suspect held in place by the collective will of strangers. The mother, still clutching her child, was guided back toward the safety of the store's interior. The glass doors slid shut behind her, placing a barrier between her and the man, leaving him outside in the cold, surrounded by the people who had refused to look away. Order has a sound. It is the click of handcuffs, the closing of a patrol car door, and the low murmur of officers taking statements. Not long after the crowd had intervened, the blue lights of the Italian state police, the Polizia di Stato, began to reflect off the wet pavement and the glass facade of the Esselunga. The silent flashing painted the scene in rhythmic washes of azure, signaling the end of the chaos and the beginning of procedure. The officers moved with the practiced calm of those who spend their lives managing the aftermath of adrenaline. They took control of the suspect. The man, who had been the source of such sudden violence, was now reduced to a figure in the back of a police vehicle. He was charged with attempted aggravated kidnapping, a crime made all the more severe because it was committed against a minor. The charges also included aggravated bodily harm, accounting for the injury the child had sustained in the struggle. The investigation began immediately, but quietly. Officers spoke to the witnesses, the strangers who had become guardians. They took names, checked identifications, and cataloged the sequence of events. The surveillance footage was secured, the silent witness that would ensure there was no ambiguity about what had occurred. The chaos of the event was slowly converted into paperwork, into files and evidence bags. The system took the burden of justice onto its shoulders, allowing the mother to focus entirely on the child in her arms. The man was driven away, leaving the parking lot as it was before, wet, gray, and filled with the comings and goings of ordinary life. But the atmosphere had changed. The mundane setting had been marked by the event, but also by the response. The police tape, if there was any, would eventually be removed. The cars would leave. But the record of the night would remain in the police logs, a testament to a danger that was met and stopped by the swift arrival of the law. The journey from the supermarket to the hospital was a transition from the cold, uncontrolled air of the street to the warm, sterile safety of medical care. The ambulance ride was likely a blur of lights and gentle assurances. For the child, the pain was real, but so was the presence of her mother. They arrived at the hospital in Bergamo, a place of hushed corridors and white sheets, where the only goal is healing. Doctors and nurses moved with soft efficiency. The diagnosis was confirmed: a fractured femur. It is a significant injury, particularly for a child of only 1 year. The thigh bone is the strongest in the human body, and its fracture spoke to the sheer violence of the force that had been applied during the tug-of-war. But bones, especially in the young, are remarkably resilient. They knit back together. They grow stronger at the break. The child was settled into a bed. The leg stabilized. The pain managed. The mother sat by the bedside. The adrenaline of the parking lot slowly fading into the exhaustion of relief. The hospital room became a new sanctuary, smaller than the supermarket, but infinitely safer. The beeping here was not of cash registers, but of monitors, a steady, rhythmic assurance that life was continuing, beat by beat. We often worry about the invisible scars left by such events, but children have a capacity for forgetting that adults envy. The trauma of the moment would likely fade from the child's conscious memory, overwritten by years of birthdays, summers, and safe nights. She would heal. The bone would mend. And while the mother would likely carry the memory of that shadow in the doorway for much longer, she would also carry the memory of the grip that held and the wall of strangers that rose up to meet them in the rain. The night outside the hospital window was dark, but inside the lights were steady, and the long process of recovery had already begun. The ledger of justice is written in ink and evidence. It is a slow, methodical process that turns the chaos of a single moment into the order of a closed file. While the mother and child began their quiet journey of healing within the white walls of the hospital, another machinery was already turning in the heart of Bergamo. The investigation would not be a long one. There was no mystery here, no unsolved question to keep you awake. The door was closed on this chapter the moment the cuffs were applied. Authorities moved with a swift and clinical precision. The man, whose shadow had so briefly darkened the doorway of the Esselunga, was now merely a name on a report. He was processed through the system, stripped of his ability to cause harm. The Italian state police, known for their rigorous adherence to procedure, cataloged the events of that February afternoon with absolute clarity. According to official reports, the charges laid against him were severe, reflecting the gravity of the line he had crossed. He was charged with attempted aggravated kidnapping. The term aggravated is a heavy one in the eyes of the law. It speaks to the vulnerability of the victim, a child barely old enough to walk, and the brazen nature of the act. But the charges did not end there. He also faced counts of aggravated bodily harm. The fractured femur, that small but resilient bone that had borne the brunt of the struggle, became a silent testament to the violence of his grip. It was a physical receipt of the trauma, ensuring that his actions could not be dismissed as a mere misunderstanding. The evidence was overwhelming. In many cases we discuss during these quiet hours, justice relies on the fragile memory of witnesses or the circumstantial threads of a timeline. But here, the truth was captured in black and white. The surveillance video, originally published by the Italian state police, served as the unblinking eye of the law. What was once a terrifying sequence of events was now the key to certainty. The footage showed the mechanics of the struggle without bias. It showed the mother's refusal to let go. It showed the arrival of the strangers. It showed the man's intent, clear and undeniable. This video became the silent witness that ensured the man could not deny his actions. It removed the need for the mother to relive the details in a way that might be challenged. The camera had seen it all. It had seen the mundane rhythm of the shoppers, the sudden disruption of the flow, and the immediate restoration of order by the community. The investigation would later confirm that the response of the bystanders was critical. The people of Bergamo, those shoppers who had simply been buying bread or milk for Valentine's Day, had become an integral part of the judicial process. Their statements were taken. Their accounts were filed. The wall of strangers that had physically protected the child now protected the truth. They described a man who was, for lack of a better term, a bad hombre, someone who had tried to break the social contract of safety. But they also described a community that refused to let that break occur. The system worked exactly as it was designed to. The threat was identified, contained, and neutralized. Life, as it always does, began to return to its natural rhythm. The Esselunga supermarket remained open. The automatic doors continued to slide apart for families, for couples, for the elderly. The scanners continued to beep in their steady, hypnotic cadence. The lights hummed with the same fluorescent consistency. To walk past that entrance in the days that followed would be to see no sign of the struggle. The physical world heals quickly. The scuff marks on the floor are buffed away. The cold air of the vestibule is cycled out. But the solidity of the outcome remains. There's a profound comfort in knowing that the system held. We often worry about the cracks in the pavement, the places where safety might slip away. But in this case, the pavement was solid. The mother held on. The strangers stepped in. The police arrived, and the courts took over. It was a sequence of protections that functioned perfectly, layer after layer, ensuring that the child remained exactly where she belonged. The legal process would take its course. grinding forward with the slow inevitability of a glacier. But for us, looking back at the file from the safety of tonight, the conclusion is already written. The man is gone. The threat is removed. The judicial ledger is balanced. We can close this file knowing that justice was not just a concept, but an action. It was served cold, efficient, and final. And so we step back. We leave the fluorescent lights of the supermarket and the clinical order of the police station. We drift upwards, moving away from the specific details of the case, and return to the wider geography of the night. The city of Bergamo lies below us, a tapestry of old stone and modern streets, resting in the embrace of the Lombardy region. It is late now. The traffic has thinned to a rare, distant hum. The rain that fell so heavily on that February afternoon has changed its character. As the temperature drops in the deep hours of the night, the rain turns to a soft, drifting mist, perhaps even the hint of snow. It settles over the cobblestones of the Città Alta, the upper town, softening the edges of the Venetian walls. These walls have stood for centuries, silent guardians that have watched over generations of mothers and children. They have seen storms come and go, and they remain unmoved. To the north, the Alps stand like silent sentinels. They are the permanent backdrop to this valley, their peaks hidden tonight by the low clouds, but their presence felt in the crispness of the air. They hold back the wind. They shelter the valley floor. There is a sense of deep geological time here, a reminder that human events, no matter how intense, are fleeting moments in the long history of the earth. The mountains breathe in, and they breathe out. The lights of the Esselunga have dimmed for the night. The aisles are empty and silent. The products sit in perfect rows, waiting for the morning. The automatic doors are locked and still. The world of commerce has paused, giving way to the world of rest. In the hospital, we can imagine the mother and child sleeping. The pain is managed. The fear has been replaced by the steady rhythm of recovery. They are together. That is the only fact that matters now. The bond that was tested held firm, and you, wherever you are tonight, are also safe. The events we have spoken of are in the past. They are distant echoes that cannot reach you here. You are in your own sanctuary, protected by your own walls, your own warmth. The waking world has receded, leaving you in this quiet space. If you are joining us for a pain-enforced nap, or simply trying to quiet a busy mind, let this story be a reminder of resilience. Let it be a reminder that even when shadows appear, there are hands ready to help. There are strangers ready to become shields. The valley is quiet. The snow falls gently on the empty streets, covering the tracks of the day. The silence is heavy and comforting, like a thick wool blanket pulled up to the chin. We can let go of the tension now. We can let go of the vigilance. The watch has been kept, and the outcome was good. If you feel heavy eyes setting in, do not fight them. Let the narrative drift away. Let the sound of my voice become nothing more than a background texture, weaving into the sound of the rain or the hum of the room. You have traveled a long way with us tonight, through the aisles of the mundane and into the sudden sharp turn of events, and finally, back out into the peace of the resolution. The night is long, but we are awake together in spirit, and now it is time to rest. The file is closed. The city sleeps under the watchful gaze of the mountains, and here, in the safety of the dark, we can finally find peace. And so, the file closes. If you are still with me, you can let go now. If you missed the beginning, or simply want to remain in this rain-soaked world, let the story begin again. Sleep well. Good night. The story of protection in Bergamo did not begin on that February afternoon at the supermarket entrance. It began centuries ago, written in the limestone and brick of the Venetian walls that still embrace the upper town. To truly understand the instinct that shielded the child, we must first understand the memory of the stone itself. These walls, known locally as the Mura Venete, rise from the earth like a geological formation, a man-made cliff designed to separate the precious heart of the city from the chaotic world below. They were constructed in the 16th century, not merely as a boundary, but as a promise of safety to those who lived within their shadow. If we were to walk along the perimeter of these walls tonight, under the cover of the winter mist, we would see how time has softened their purpose. What was once built to repel armies now serves to hold back the silence of the valley. The stone is cool to the touch, damp with the eternal humidity of the Lombardy plain. Patches of moss, thick and velvet green, cling to the mortar, feeding on the moisture of the fog. These are the silent guardians that have watched over generations of mothers and children. They have stood firm through wars, through plagues, and through the slow, grinding passage of centuries. They remind us that the desire to protect what is vulnerable is the oldest instinct in this city. It is soaked into the very ground. The strangers who formed a human shield around the mother and child were unknowingly echoing the purpose of the walls that loomed in the distance, standing shoulder to shoulder, becoming a fortress of flesh and bone when the fortress of stone was too far away. From the ancient heights of the Città Alta, we descend into the modern rhythm of the lower town. Here, the sanctuary is not built of stone, but of light and commerce. The Esselunga supermarket is a different kind of fortress, one constructed of glass, steel, and the comforting predictability of abundance. To walk into an Italian supermarket on a winter evening is to enter a trance state, a ritual of domesticity that is almost hypnotic in its repetition. Let us walk the aisles as they were in the hour before the event. The automatic doors slide open to reveal a world of aggressive brightness, where the fluorescent lights hum at a frequency that seems to banish the shadows of the outside world. The air inside is different. It is conditioned, dry, and carries the complex, layered scent of 1,000 different lives. The first thing that hits you is the smell of the bakery section, the panificio. It is the scent of warm yeast and toasted flour, of focaccia glistening with olive oil and coarse salt, and the sharp, sweet aroma of freshly baked brioche. It is a smell that signals safety, telling the primal part of our brain that there is food, there is warmth, and there is order. The floor is a vast expanse of polished linoleum, scuffed by the rubber soles of winter boots and the black wheels of shopping carts. Listen to the soundscape of this modern sanctuary. It is a low-level drone, a symphony of the mundane. There is the rhythmic squeak of a cart with a misaligned wheel, a sound that loops and repeats like a metronome. There is the distant, muffled thud of produce being placed into bags, the heavy, earthy sound of potatoes, the crisp crinkle of plastic wrapping around lettuce. And cutting through it all is the electronic heartbeat of the checkout line. Beep, beep, beep. The scanners read the barcodes with a relentless efficiency, cataloging the needs of the city one item at a time. We move past the produce where the vibrant reds of Sicilian blood oranges and the deep greens of Tuscan kale stand in stark contrast to the gray weather outside. The aisles are canyons of color, stacked with the bright blues of pasta boxes and the gold of olive oil bottles. In the dairy aisle, the air grows colder. The hum of the open refrigerators is louder here, a mechanical purr that keeps the mascarpone and the mozzarella at the perfect temperature. Shoppers move through this space with a sleepwalker's grace. They are tired from the day, their eyes scanning labels, their minds drifting to dinner plans and bedtime routines. They do not look at each other, but they move in a synchronized dance of avoidance, stepping aside to let a cart pass, reaching for a carton of milk without breaking stride. It is a choreography of peace. In this space, the idea of violence feels impossible, like a fire trying to burn underwater. The orderliness of the shelves, the straight lines of the tiles, the predictability of the prices, it all creates a false sense of invulnerability. We believe that because the cans are stacked in rows, the world makes sense. And then there is the threshold, the transition point between the warm, yellow light of the interior and the cold, blue darkness of the parking lot. The automatic sliding doors of the Escalunga are a marvel of modern engineering that we rarely stop to consider. They are the eyelids of the building, blinking open and shut in response to our movement. Let us slow down time and observe the mechanics of this portal. Above the glass, a motion sensor sits like a dormant insect. It emits a continuous field of invisible waves, waiting for a disruption. When a shopper approaches, the waves break, and a silent signal is sent to the motor hidden in the ceiling. The gears engage. The glass panels, heavy and thick, begin to glide apart on their tracks. There is a specific sound to this movement, a low pneumatic whoosh, followed by the soft click of the doors hitting their stops. As the glass parts, the atmosphere shifts. There is an invisible curtain of air, an air door, that blasts downward from the vent above the exit. It is designed to keep the heat in and the cold out. A final invisible barrier that brushes against the top of your head as you step through. For a brief second, you are in two worlds at once. Your back is still bathed in the warm, artificial glow of the supermarket, smelling of bread and soap. Your face is hit by the damp, biting chill of the February rain. You can hear the hiss of tires on the wet pavement of the parking lot. A harsh, organic sound that replaces the comforting beep of the scanners. The glass of the doors is tempered, designed to shatter into harmless cubes if broken, but strong enough to withstand the wind. It is transparent, allowing us to see the world outside, yet it acts as a filter. Through the rain-streaked glass, the headlights of passing cars smear into long streaks of light, like oil paintings in motion. The world outside looks distorted, impressionistic, and cold. When the mother and child stepped onto the rubber mat of the vestibule, the sensor detected them. The gears turned. The glass slid open. The barrier was removed. It is in this precise moment of transition that we are most vulnerable. We are switching modes, moving from the role of shopper to the role of traveler. We are fishing for car keys, adjusting our grip on bags, buttoning up coats. Our attention is fractured. The sliding doors, in their indifferent efficiency, do not know who is walking out or who is waiting outside. They simply open. They create a hole in the fortress. And on that Valentine's Day, in the gray twilight of Bergamo, the hole in the fortress was exactly where the shadow was waiting. But even as we examine the mechanics of the door and the layout of the aisles, we must return to the image of the walls. The glass doors of the supermarket could not stop the intruder. The sensors could not detect intent. But the spirit of the city, the spirit that built the Mura Venete, remained intact. The true barrier against the darkness was not made of glass or stone, but of the collective will of the people who stood in that vestibule. They became the wall. They became the censor. And like the ancient stones that still hold back the fog on the upper hills, they held the line. The rain continues to fall on the cobblestones of the upper town, slicking the ancient ramparts with a sheen of winter water. The lights of the Esselunga have long since dimmed for the night. The automatic doors locked and still, the sensors blind to the empty parking lot. The hum of the refrigerators continues in the dark, preserving the sustenance for another day, and the city sleeps, wrapped in the layers of its own history, protected by the invisible threads that bind stranger to stranger. We can leave them there now. We can let the image of the yellow supermarket bags and the gray stone walls fade into the gentle static of the rain. The loop is closed. The child is safe. And the night is ours.